Hello and welcome to the Accuplacer Reading Comprehension Test, the information session. My name is Julie and I am a lead coach in the Writing, Reading, and Speech Assistance area of the Learning Commons. So today we will first go over the reading comprehension and then we will go over the writing comprehension if you're staying for that test as well. There will be a chance for questions in between and a short break. First, I wanted to put up what our hours are. Please note that we are closed on Fridays and Saturdays during the summer term. But all our hours are there and you can make an appointment either online, you can call, or you could also walk in. We do online appointments as well as face-to-face appointments. So please keep in mind that this is a general overview of the concepts. If there's something that still seems unfamiliar to you at the end of this session, then that's a great opportunity for you to make a one-on-one appointment with a coach to go over it. So what can you expect to learn today? Well, we'll give you some facts about what the test is like, what it looks like, and the types of questions that you could expect. We'll also provide you with some helpful hints that you could use during the test taking process. We'll have some practice questions, some reminders, of course, to keep in mind, and then some additional resources that you would be able to practice at home. Please keep in mind that this is the information session for those students who would have been completing 6 years or more of school in the United States and you consider English as your native language. If you view yourself as a different category, non-native speaking, then you would want to attend the ESL information sessions. So here's some general facts about the test, and what's nice to know is that whether you're taking the reading or the writing, you could expect the same format, so that's actually reassuring. It will be web-based, so you go to the testing center. Do you know where the testing center is? You go down Starbucks, across from Starbucks, you would go there, and it's going to be on a computer. They'll set you up with a computer. It's untimed, so that's lovely. So try to get rid of any of those testing anxieties that you have where you feel like you're rushed. You do not have to feel rushed. You could read it, reread it, take your time to really analyze the question. And allow yourself enough time to take it. We suggest that you allow yourself at least an hour in order to do that. It's computer adaptive, so what does that mean? Well, your test will be a lot different than what your test will look like. And you'll actually get a sense that your questions start changing. So I remember when I took the test, I felt as though the questions were getting a little bit harder. That's actually a good sign. The questions are adapting to how well you're doing on the test. You'll get your score results right away, and they'll give you a sheet with what that score is. And you could rest assured that it's only 20 questions. So for both the reading and the writing, it's going to be 20 questions and it will be in multiple choice format. Before you take the test, please be aware that it's going to ask you just some general information in the beginning. It will ask some privacy questions, some demographic questions. That's just to be expected before you're taking the test. So just so that you're aware of it, you're not caught off guard. But before you take the test, please consider taking the test on different days. You wouldn't want to take the reading and the writing on the same day. You'll feel completely burned out. And you want to allow yourself enough time for both of those. Choose a time of day that works best for you. You're the most alert. You know that you're not rushing to have to get to work or anything like that. Make sure you bring your photo ID. You need your student ID number. Allow yourself for that extra time. You will want to check the hours in order to see what time works best. Ask them for scratch paper or a blank sheet of paper and a pencil. They won't just overtly offer it to you, but you will want it, and we're actually going to provide you with some techniques of when that will be really helpful for you to use. So go on to COD's Testing Center website and you can go to any of the locations. You could go here to the main campus or one of the satellite locations. They do have the testing available at any of the locations, but the hours are different, so please make sure that you check that. And they will not allow you to start taking the test an hour before they close. So again, you want at least an hour for the test, so you want to go in plenty of time. So, well, what is the purpose of the reading comprehension test? So the Accuplacer is meant to assess your level of reading comprehension and then determine the appropriate course placement based on your comprehension skills. So we're going to give you some directions to follow. When you are taking the reading test, first, you're going to want to preview the questions first before you even have started to read the passage. This will allow you to get a sense of what type of question you could expect. And then read the passage, read it more than once. I have a horrible short-term memory, so by the time I've gotten to the end of the passage and I've looked at my choices, I've already forgotten what I've read. So it's on time. So allow yourself to read it a few times to really comprehend what's being said. And then, of course, look for clues within the answer choices. So it's multiple choice, and process of elimination works really well with this test. So you should be able to use that technique throughout and use those clues throughout the answers. Do you have any questions before I show you the types of questions you could see? Okay, so let's take a look at there's two different types of questions that you'll see on the reading comprehension. One that's very specifically directly in the text, and then those that you are going to have to provide some context clues or some inferences in order to determine the best answer. There are going to be 5 different reading areas, so 5 different types of questions that they'll ask you. One would be a main idea question and a supporting detail question. These 2 types of questions will be directly in the passage, and then the next 3 will be more inference questions. So what is inferred by the passage? What is the author's main purpose or tone? And we'll discuss the difference between those 2 later on. And then what is the relationship between 2 sentences? That's a little bit different, and we'll take a look at what I mean by that. So we're going to look at each of these content areas so that you get a sense of how they're different when you're reading them. When you take a look at the main idea questions, again, they're right there within the passage. So you're going to want to read the paragraph, really ask yourself, what is the passage trying to communicate about the topic? What is the main idea? What's the most important thing to get out of it? Look for the topic and ask yourself who or what, and state what the main idea is in a single sentence before you read your answer choices. This might be an area where you're going to use your scratch paper. As you're reading the main passage, maybe you're jotting down some notes about what you think the main idea of that passage is. Then look for a repetition of ideas or keywords throughout the passage. That's a clear indication that if it's repeated quite often, it's important. Reread the first and the last sentences, also considered our topic sentences. Those are a good way of being able to point to the main idea. And then choose the best answer from the answers given, and the best answer to what is directly stated within the passage. So let's take a look at what the question would sound like. Well, very specifically, it's going to say to you, what is the main idea of this passage? Remember, you're reading the question first before you've read the passage. So you know when you start reading this passage, you're going to be looking for that main idea, or what is the most important thing the author is trying to communicate. So here's what the passage will look like, and it's a very common length that you'll see. Some are shorter, some are longer, but this is about average. Long thought to be a case of mistaken identity, the discovery of the Bornean rainbow toad by European explorers in 1924 was recently verified by scientists. The explorers had made a black and white sketch of an unusual toad they had found in the jungles of Southeast Asia, christening it the Bornean rainbow toad. Skeptical but curious, scientists recently went to look for the toad and ended up finding 3 specimens. Now I read a lot quicker out loud than I do when I'm sitting down reading. I'm a very slow reader, so just keep that in mind. It's on time. So I read this passage, I look for those keywords, and I ask myself, what are they trying to communicate? Can I say that within one sentence? So now I'm going to look at what my choices are. Explorers discovered the Bornean rainbow toad almost a century ago. There are only 3 Bornean rainbow toads left in the wild. Scientists recently solved a long-standing mystery concerning a rare toad species. Or scientists never give up the search for rare and endangered species. Do you need me to go back to that passage? Okay. So, now you're rereading it or just scanning it for those keywords. Again, you have the time to do that. And remember, with main idea, it's more general. So you want to look at sort of the umbrella topic, and what then would fall underneath it would be supporting details. So what is the most important thing? Is it that toad explorers discovered something? Or is it that there's only 3 rainbow toads left? Or that they solved this long-standing mystery? Or that they never gave up the search? Right, the answer would be C. That's more of the general, the main idea of the entire passage. The other things might be supporting details for that passage, but this one is the main idea. And it's just stated in different words, but you could find that directly within the text. So then there's also those implied questions. So you're still looking for the main idea, but it might not be stated as directly within the text. So you're still going to read the paragraph. You're still going to ask yourself who or what are they trying to communicate. You're still going to try to state it in one sentence, but now you have to look for those clues and make an educated guess instead of being able to point to one particular sentence. So here's what that question might look like. Again, you're reading the question first before you read the passage, and it says, which statement best expresses the unstated main idea of the above sentences? So here you know that it's a main idea question, it's the content area of main idea, but it's going to be unstated, so you have to make some assumptions here. The smaller a group is, the more opportunities we have to get to know other people well and to establish close ties with them. 2-person groups are the setting for many of our most intense and influential relationships. In 3-person groups, coalitions become possible, with 2 members joining forces against a 3rd member. 5-person groups are large enough so that people feel they can express their emotions freely and even risk antagonizing one another. Yet they are small enough so that members show regard for one another's feelings and needs. So now we're going to look at the options of that unstated main idea. 2-person groups are an important part of our lives. A 5-person group is better than a 2-person group. The number of people in a group affects relationships within the group. Or groups play a central part in every human activity within the family, workplace, and government. That's right. The answer is C. Now, A and B are supporting details, but the entire passage as a whole wasn't just about 2-person groups, and it wasn't about 5-person groups only. It was about 2, 3, and 5. While D seems intriguing, the passage didn't actually talk about within family, workplace, and government. So you want to make sure that you're staying within the essence of the passage itself. So C is the most appropriate main idea, that the number of people really affects the relationships that they have. Questions before we move on? Okay. So now let's take a look at supporting details. These questions you would find directly in the passage. Here you're going to be looking for those clue words within the question, and then scan the passage for those clue words. So read the question and then look for any sort of key words that were in the question while you're reading the passage. Read the whole section where you found those clue words, and then look for either reasons, examples, steps. So make sure you read the sentences before and after those clue words and able to really find those supporting details. So I'll give you some examples. All the following statements about the vending machines are true except. Well, except here is a really important word because you know with the multiple choice, all of them will be correct except for one. So in this case, you're actually looking for the false statement. I'll give you a minute to read this passage silently, and then we will take a look at some of the options. Is everyone done? Okay, so let's take a look. All of the statements, the following statements about the vending machines are true except. So in this case, we're looking for the false statement. They dispensed chewing gum in exchange for coins. They were the first of their kind in the country. They were utilized by trained passengers. Or they were originally designed to entertain customers. So here, we could really ask ourselves, well, which statements are true? Did they exchange it for coins? Well, let's take a look back. Okay, so it was a vending machine. So yes, the first coin operated. You see that in the first sentence. Were they the first in the country? Again, if you look at the first sentence, the first coin-operated vending machines in the United States were installed. Were they utilized by train passengers? Well, they were installed on the elevated platforms of the New York City railway system in 1888. So yes, indeed, they were used by passengers. And so then the last were, they were originally designed to entertain customers. So, well, we want to check our work, right? We've kind of eliminated the first three, but we want to make sure that D is indeed false. Originally designed to entertain customers. That's the key word here. Well, first they were used just to sell the chewing gum. And then in the last sentence, if you look, it says the machines were eventually updated to feature animated figures that would dance each time a gum purchase was made. So certainly while entertaining, that wasn't what the original machine was like. It eventually became that. So the correct answer in this circumstance would be D. Make sense? So let's take a look at what these inference questions would be. These are a little bit trickier because we have to look for implied meanings, and we have to do a little bit more critical thinking, educated guesses. Make sure you read the questions very carefully. Reread them so that you know that they make sense to you. Look for clues within that passage. Add clues to what you already know, and then formulate your answer. Make sure you're able to verify your answer within the text. So here's an example of what we mean by making some inferences. So let's talk about what we know about this picture. She's on the phone. She's got a blanket around her. She's got an ice pack on her head, right? So all those visual clues are things that we already know, right? So what can we imply based on this picture?
She's sick.
Yeah, right? So she's sick. And who might she be calling?
Maybe her best friend.
Yeah, maybe she's calling her best friend to vent about her being sick. Maybe she's calling into work. Maybe, we're not sure, but we're able to make some suggestions based on what we already know about this picture, okay? So that's kind of the same idea that you're going to do. You want to make some educated guesses based on what you already know about the topic. So here's an example. The passage implies that Franzen's criticism of the Oprah Book Club was motivated primarily by. So since you have read this first before the passage, you know that you're looking for an implied statement. So a little bit more guessing work. So you're going to read the passage carefully and then look for some clues within the passage, being able to verify your answer at the end. Again, I'm going to give you a couple minutes to read this on your own so that you could get a sense of kind of how long you might need to read a passage. Okay? So after you've read this passage, can you think of a reason why Franzen might have criticized Oprah's book club? And you're looking for certain words that he's saying. He mentions schmaltzy, one-dimensional. He views his own work as high art, in the high art literary tradition. So then, would you be able to determine what that criticism was motivated by? Was it motivated by pride, anger, insensitivity, or ignorance? Now, what's important to note here is we might have our own opinion of him dissing Oprah's book club and what type of person that makes him, but you're just looking at the implied suggestion within the passage. What does the author want to communicate to us? Right, so him thinking that his work is in the high art literary tradition and calling her choices one-dimensional, he really just has this sense of pride within his own work. So that's why he would have criticized it. Good. Okay, so then the fourth content area is the main purpose. So all authors have a reason why they're writing that passage. And so that's what's important to ask yourself. When you were looking at the main idea, you were asking yourself who or what. But for this particular type of question, you're asking yourself why. Why did he or she say that? It's often just in the language used, in the words that have been chosen. Are they meant to inform? That would be more objective. Are they arguing something? You'd really hear it within the work. Are they trying to entertain? Are they trying to mock? Think about it in a sense of if you read the passage aloud, what would it sound like? What would the author sound like? So again, this is what the question would read. What's the main purpose? And here you know you're going to then ask yourself why when you're reading that passage. Was he or she giving information to inform us, to persuade us? What was the reason? Start looking at the specific words here. So here's an example. American copyright laws, laws that prohibit the use, distribution, or adaptation of another's product without permission, first applied only to the copying of books, but now cover such diverse products as sound recordings, motion pictures, and computer programs. The Federal Copyright Act of 1790 allowed copyright protection for 14 years with one 14-year extension allowed if the author survived the first 14-year term. The Copyright Act of 1909 extended copyright protection to 28 years with a 28-year renewal, and the Copyright Act of 1976 extended it further to 75 years. Okay, pretty bland language. So do we hear any really big opinion of the copyright law within the passage? No, so let's take a look at what our choices might be. Is the main purpose of the passage to explain the need for copyright laws? Are they trying to tell us we need copyright laws and this is why? Is it to show how copyright laws have been applied? Is it to indicate how copyright laws have changed? Or is it to argue that copyright laws need to be expanded? So again, look at these, the verbs here. What are they doing? Are they explaining, showing, indicating, or arguing? Yeah, you might look at B and say, okay, well, they are kind of showing you something and they're doing it in an objective way, but they haven't really showed us anything about the application of the law. Right, so then this is how we've really seen the change. It's basically giving us the chronological order of copyright law. And it starts in the 1790s and then it goes through all the way to 76. So that would be the better choice. And so often what goes hand in hand with purpose, why they wrote it, is tone. So tone is just the attitude that an author has towards something. So either toward the work itself, toward the person that's being described within the passage. So we want to hear what that attitude is. And again, you get this through word choice and language. So are they angry? Are they annoyed? Are they delighted? Are they sarcastic, critical, whatever adjective that you could apply to that author? How are they feeling about what it is they're saying? So let's take a look at that. So here's what your passage would look like. And again, this is, if you read it aloud, what would it sound like? What words have been used? And how are they saying it to us? And here's your passage. Billie Jean King, a professional women's tennis player in the 1960s and 1970s, won 12 Grand Slam titles during her career, but she is better known for a non-tournament match she played in 1973. She played against former men's professional player Bobby Riggs in a Battle of the Sexes tennis match in front of more than 30,000 people and a huge TV audience. King quieted skeptics and scored a well-deserved victory for female athletes around the world, defeating the overconfident Riggs in 3 straight sets. Okay, so how did the author really feel about Billie Jean King? Was the tone admiring, disbelieving, indifferent, or odd? So let's try to do process of elimination here. Again, I had mentioned that it is a technique that could work pretty well. So we should be able to get rid of 2 of the answers where we know for sure that's not what it is. Right, so B we could definitely get rid of. I mean, the author believed that it happened. It's not like she or he doubted it. And indifferent, okay? Indifferent would mean that, well, they don't care. They don't think that it's important. Well, certain words like well-deserved victory and quieted skeptics and overconfident Riggs, those are all key words to really point to the tone of the author. And right, A would be the best choice here of how the author felt. He or she really admired Billie Jean King for the strides that she made within the tennis career. Okay? So now let's take a look at that last section, sentence relationships. Now this is much different than the previous sections. This is where it's going to give you 2 sentences and it wants you to come up with what the relationship is between those sentences. And this is where the use of signal words will come in handy. So if you take a look at your handout, well, first you'll see in the front we've got the general facts about the test. Before you take the test, we've tried to put the content areas so you remember. But if you look at the back of the sheet, you'll see all of these signal words. These are your transitional words or phrases, okay? So get a really good sense of what these transitions are prior to taking the test and why they are used. We use different transitions to mean different things. So for instance, if we're going to do cause and effect, a common transition we use is because. And that wouldn't be the same transition we use for, let's say, to signal a contrast. that would be something like however or unlike. So get a sense of what those are. Now, the best thing to do during this portion of the test is look at the two sentences and then use your paper to write down different transition words that you can use and which ones make the most sense. If you want to, you could even write down both of those sentences with that transitional word in it and read it to yourself so that you could see which one seems to be the best connection. So we try to give you just a summary here. So for addition, clarification, and comparison, we'll look on your sheet. So for addition words, these are some of the options. What else does your sheet have? Right, further, moreover, okay, so you'll see the list there. But if the author needed to clarify, it might be things like, in fact, in other words, obviously, of course, okay? And then comparisons would be those words like also, likewise, similar, right, okay? So let's take a look at this, and again, this is going to be much different. So here we're not looking at a passage, we're just looking at two sentences. These two sentences are missing that transitional word in between. So take a look at your handout, and we're going to try to put a transitional word right here that would properly connect these two ideas, and then we'd get a sense of, well, what is that connection? What's the relationship between the two? So it says, a recent study in the Proceedings of the National Academy of Sciences, USA, links childhood self-control to health and well-being in adulthood. The study claims that children with less self-control are more likely than other children to be unemployed and to engage in unhealthy behaviors as adults. So use your scratch paper there. Do you think you would use something like likewise? Is it trying to create this comparison? Is it trying to give you an addition of information? Furthermore, would for example work? And then, plug those transitions in, and which one makes the most sense. Okay, so let's take a look then. How are the two sentences related? And that's how it will be worded for you. So based on the transitions that you wrote down and the two sentences that we had, do we feel as though the first states a claim that the second refutes? That would be, for instance, using however. The second gives an exception to the rule stated in the first. Again, that might be something like however or unlike because it's an exception. Do they make the same point but use different sources? Or do they expand on information? Does the second expand on information from the first? So let's take a look. Well, it's talking about the Proceedings of the National Academy of Sciences USA, and then it says the study. So we know it's the same study, so it's not different sources. Would however or unlike work here? No, that would not be the best. So we might say something like, for example. And the second expands on information given in the first. So it's not contradicting, it's actually giving us more. Okay? Make sense? Yeah, it's a little bit different. Okay, so now let's take a look at your sheet. And we're looking at the transition words for contrast. However, nevertheless, yet, on the other hand. And again, we're giving you these so that when you're taking the test, you already have those in the back of your mind, so you know, okay, well, would on the other hand work here? Would, for example, work here? What's the best thing? And if you could determine the best transitional word, you should then be able to determine what the connection is. Cause effect. We've got because, as a result of, therefore, and then those spatial words, those are just to show location, so your prepositions. Okay, so let's take a look at one. I'll have you read this to yourselves, and then we'll try to establish its relationship. Okay? So now try to plug in a transition word here. Would you use something like however? 2 months after graduation, she received a job offer. No, she took numerous art history courses, so it would seem that that's probably what she would get. Certainly spatial order would not work here. We're not showing location. What about therefore? Therefore, 2 months after graduation. Okay? So let's take a look at what our choices are. It mentions a probable cause of the event described in the second. I'm sorry, the question is, what does the first sentence do? So now we're trying to find the connection of what the first sentence is. Does the first sentence mention that probable cause? Does it reveal a problem to which the second gives a solution? Does it describe the consequence of the situation mentioned in the second? So that would be effect cause. Or does it state a fact while the second offers an opinion? Well, it wasn't an opinion. She really did graduate and do that. And so this first one is cause effect. This would be problem solution. This would be effect cause. And then that would be fact or opinion. What do we think? Right. The first one gives you a cause of the second one. Okay, so it said that she had taken many art history classes and journalism classes. So as an effect of that, then she got this job at the magazine. Okay? All right, so now let's take a look at some more of those transitions. So to illustrate, an author would use things like for example, or for instance. To summarize will be in summary, to conclude. And then time, these are for chronological order. Okay? So again, if you could tack on the right transition, you'd be able to establish the relationship between the two. A number of factors, including melting ice caps and climate change, have contributed to rising sea levels, which in turn are causing significant beach erosion. Some parts of coastal Louisiana are losing up to 50 feet of beach every year. So what would work the most? Are we looking at a chronological order here? Are we looking at a summary? Are we looking at an illustration? Would we use for example? Right, for example, seems like it might be the best. So let's take a look at what our options are. So how are the two sentences related? The second provides background information for the first. That would mean where it's more general than specific, but the second one was pretty specific. They contradict each other? No, they're both talking about beach erosion, so I've already eliminated those two. But of course, we want to make sure that we read all of them and we check all of them just to make sure. The first describes a phenomenon, while the second provides a specific example of that phenomenon. Or the first tells what happened after the events described in the second. Okay, that would be like a cause and effect. Right, so we've got just that example. So as we had determined, for example, will be the best transitional phrase to use there. Okay? And then we also have just facts and opinions. So you'll have these two sentences and you have to determine, are they both facts, are they opinions, and what's going on. So obviously with a fact, the language will be very objective and we should be able to prove it. Whereas of course an opinion would be more subjective. We'll get some feeling or judgment behind it, okay? So let's take a look at an example. The food sold in the office cafeteria lacks both taste and freshness. Would that be a fact or an opinion? Okay, well, lacking that taste or freshness is more opinionated. It might be the opinion of most, but this is, you know, definitely subjective in language. Whereas if you take a look at the second one, according to a recent study, less than 15% of company employees have purchased food in our office cafeteria. So we've got that number here, it's from a study, and it's able to be proven, so that's our fact. So now let's take a look at what the question would be. Well, how are these two sentences related? The first states an opinion while the second provides a fact. Well, that sounds right, that's what we talked about, but we want to make sure that we read all of them. The first notes a problem that the second dismisses. Well, it certainly sounded like a problem, but the second one didn't dismiss it. The first offers information that the second elaborates on. And they each make the same point by using different information. And the correct choice would be A. Okay? Yeah, I could see that, but it's not really elaborating on it. It's still talking about the same thing. It's just using a source to do it, so it's providing support there. Okay? Any questions? Okay, so let's take a look at some reminders we have. Make sure you preview those questions first. So read the question first so that you know, okay, am I looking for main idea here? Purpose, tone, is it implied? Then you'd read the passage. But you first want to make sure that you understand what it's asking. Try to eliminate those wrong answers. Use process of elimination. We were able to do that and get rid of at least 2 at some of those. Choose only an answer that's supported by the selection. Okay, so it has to be something that's within the passage. And then skim that passage, but only after you've read it twice, and you want to really read it. The first time I tried to take this test, I did try to just skim it and read it really quickly, and it for sure did not work. So you want to make sure that you read it very carefully, reread it if you're missing anything so that you understand it. And then at the end, you're just going to be skimming because you're looking for keywords or repeated words or that topic sentence, things like that. Okay? And then your handout has several different really, really great sources on it. You could go and just Google the Accuplacer Placement Test Review Guide and you'll find a really, really great source with even more sample questions for you. Union Test Prep was really helpful for me. It provided study guides and those flashcards really helped. There is an app that you could download, so make sure to check that out. And then here's just some other strategies to use. If you have a library card, you're going to use the same sort of My Access login and password that you would use. If you have trouble logging into it, you could ask the library, but the Learning Express library is incredibly helpful. And again, it's very, very similar to what it's like on the test. So if you don't have your library card, make sure that you go down to the library and get that. And then just go on YouTube and Google some stuff on the Accuplacer as well. You're only able to take the test twice a year, so you just want to make sure that you just feel really, really comfortable and confident the first time that you take it, because you want to try for the best placement that you can. And again, if any of this information was confusing to you, or if you still feel like you're not really sure what inferences, purpose, tone, any of the concepts we've discussed, please schedule an appointment with a coach. On our website, you could go here and schedule a face-to-face or online, or you could also call or walk in as well for that appointment, and we'd be happy to go over any of those concepts further with you and give you some additional practice as well. Any other last-minute questions? Okay, well, good luck. And if you're sticking around for the next information session, we'll just take a short break. I would very much appreciate it if you filled out that evaluation sheet for me so that we could look at areas for improvement. And do not forget to sign in at the front desk if you have not done so already. Okay? Thank you very much.